Hello? I know you might be watching this video alone in the quiet of the night, when the deepest thoughts often arise. Perhaps you've spent the whole day carrying weights you didn't even realize were on your shoulders. You feel exhausted, don't you? Not just physical tiredness, but that weariness that seems to come from the soul. You know, there's a reason you feel this way. And no, it's not because you're weak. It's quite the opposite. You are carrying burdens that are not yours. Think about that for a moment. How many worries do you carry that belong to tomorrow, which hasn't even arrived yet? How many problems of others have you taken on as your own? How many expectations are you trying to meet that, in reality, were never placed on your shoulders by God? It's as if you're carrying a backpack, and every hour someone puts another stone inside. A stone called, "What if I fail?" Another stone. "I need to fix this for everyone." One more. "I can't disappoint anyone." And so, without realizing it, you are bent over under a weight you were never called to carry. There's a passage in Galatians 6:5 ESV that tells us, "For each will bear his own load." It seems to contradict what I'm saying, doesn't it? But in fact, in the original, the word load refers to what is genuinely our responsibility. There's a big difference between carrying what is ours and taking on what doesn't belong to us. Have you ever wondered why you feel so overwhelmed even when you're doing everything right? Jesus isn't saying life will be without challenges. He's saying we don't have to carry them alone. That there's a difference between the burdens he places, which are for our growth, and the burdens we ourselves or others place, which crush us. Take a deep breath. Close your eyes for a moment, if you can. Can you identify which weights in your life were not placed there by God? That constant worry about what others think. That need to control every detail of the future. That guilt over situations you can't change. That responsibility to make everyone around you happy. Are these your burdens? Or did you take them on without realizing it? Many of us were raised believing that loving means carrying the world on our backs. That being strong is never admitting we are overwhelmed. But what if I told you that true strength is in recognizing your limits? In knowing how to say, "This is not mine to carry." There's a passage in Psalm 55:22, NIV, that few quote, but which speaks directly to our exhausted hearts. "Cast your cares on the Lord, and He will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken." Perhaps you are that person in the family everyone goes to when there's a problem. That friend who is always available, even when they are broken inside. That professional who takes on more and more responsibilities because if I don't do it, who will? And at the end of the day, you feel empty, exhausted, as if you're running a marathon with no finish line. Stop for a moment. This exhaustion is a sign. It's not a sign of failure. It's a call to discern, to separate what is your legitimate burden and what you've taken on out of fear, pride, or a distorted understanding of what it means to love and serve. When Elijah fled into the wilderness, exhausted and afraid, God didn't scold him for his weakness. Instead, what did he do? He allowed him to sleep, sent an angel to feed him, and then spoke to him not in the strong wind, nor the earthquake, nor the fire, but in a gentle whisper. Sometimes our exhaustion is the moment we can finally hear God's gentleness. Do you know why you are so tired? Because carrying the world is not your job. It never was. Tonight, I want to invite you to do something courageous. Identify one burden you are carrying that is not yours. It might be responsibility for the behavior of someone you love. It might be anxiety about a future that hasn't arrived. It might be guilt over something that has already been forgiven. And now comes the difficult and liberating part. Are you willing to leave that burden at the foot of the cross? To say, "Lord, I recognize that I have taken on something that was not mine to carry." But how do you do that in practice? How do you know what is yours to carry and what isn't? How do you find this balance that seems so impossible? That's what we're going to discover now. Perhaps you're asking yourself, but how do I identify which burdens are not mine to carry? How do I find this balance? Well, let's start with a simple truth. God never calls us to do what only He can do. This is the first step to discernment. When you try to control what other people think about you, you are trying to do something that not even God Himself does. He gives us free will. When you become the savior of everyone around you, assuming that without you everything falls apart, you are occupying a place that only God can occupy. There's a passage in Proverbs 16:9 ESV that says, "The heart of man plans his course, but the Lord establishes his steps." See, there's a partnership there. You do your part, but the ultimate control is not in your hands. Have you ever stopped to observe how nature works without excessive effort? Birds don't store food for years. Flowers don't force themselves to grow. There's a powerful lesson there. There is a subtle but crucial difference between responsibility and control. Responsibility is taking care of what is in your hands. Control is the illusion that we can determine the outcomes. Let me share something personal. For a long time, I carried the burden of perfection. I believed that if I didn't do everything perfectly, I would be disappointing God and everyone around me. I demanded an impossible standard of myself. Can you relate to that? One day, I found a passage in 2 Corinthians 12:9 NIV that changed my perspective. "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." It was as if God was saying, "I never asked you to be perfect. I asked you to be real." Think about it. What is the difference between carrying a cross and dragging a corpse? The cross, however heavy, is the path to resurrection. The corpse is the dead things we insist on carrying, relationships that are over, past mistakes, guilt that has already been forgiven. Could you be carrying emotional corpses? A clear sign that you are carrying a burden that is not yours is when there is no rest, when you feel constantly anxious, suffocated, as if you are always running but never arriving. God's rhythm includes rest. He literally included rest in the creation of the world. When you live without pauses, without breathing, you are operating at a rhythm that was not designed by Him. There's another way to identify burdens that are not yours. Observe the fruit. In Galatians, we learn that the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. If what you're carrying constantly produces anxiety, fear, bitterness, or resentment, well, that probably doesn't come from God. I'm going to ask you a direct question. In which areas of your life do you feel like Atlas carrying the world on your shoulders? Is it in your marriage, where you've taken responsibility for your spouse's happiness? Is it with your children, where you blame yourself for every choice they make? Is it at work, where you think everything depends solely on you? Is it in your faith, where you feel obligated to never fail, never doubt, never question? Perhaps it's time to remember the words in Ecclesiastes 3:11, ESV. He has made everything beautiful in its time. Also, He has put eternity into man's heart, yet so that he cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. There is a limit to what we can understand and control. This is not an excuse for irresponsibility, quite the opposite. It is an invitation to true responsibility, one that recognizes its limits and acts within them. Here is a liberating truth. You can love someone deeply without taking responsibility for what only they can do. You can serve without becoming a slave. You can give without completely emptying yourself. Think of the parable of the talents. The master gave to each servant according to his ability. He did not demand that the servant with 2 talents produce like the one with 5. God knows your limits. Perhaps it's time for you to know them too. A practical exercise. Take a piece of paper and write 3 columns. In the first, list what is clearly under your responsibility. In the second, what is shared responsibility. In the third, what is entirely outside your control. Be honest. Then ask yourself, how much of your stress comes from trying to control things in the third column? Remember Nehemiah, who rebuilt the walls of Jerusalem. He did his part, organized the work, distributed the tasks. But when the enemies came, he said, "Our God will fight for us." He understood the boundary between his responsibility and God's. Perhaps you grew up in an environment where you had to take on responsibilities too early. Perhaps you learned that love is proven by constant sacrifice. Perhaps you carry the belief that your worth is in what you do for others. These beliefs may be so intertwined in your heart that you no longer question them, but they are not the whole truth. What if the greatest act of faith you can make today is not to carry more, but to let go? What if trusting God means sometimes taking a step back and saying, "This is not mine to fix"? There's a question that has accompanied me in moments of overload, a question that perhaps you need to ask yourself. Who am I trying to be in this moment? God or his servant? Because when we try to be God in the lives we love, we not only crush ourselves under a weight we cannot carry, but we also rob them of the chance to relate directly with the only one who can truly bear their burdens. But one question remains: how in practice do we begin to let go? How do we make this necessary but so difficult transition? That's what we'll discover in the next part. We've reached the point where we need to talk about the how. How, in practice, do we begin to let go of these burdens that don't belong to us? How do we make this necessary but so difficult transition? I'm going to share with you some practices that have helped many people who, like you, have reached the limit of exhaustion carrying what was not theirs to carry. First, begin by recognizing that letting go is not an event, but a process. Just as you didn't accumulate all these weights in a single day, you won't free yourself from them instantly. Be patient with yourself. Jesus himself teaches us in Luke 9:23, ESV. And he said to all, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me." Note the word daily. It is a journey. Second, practice discernment through silence. Often we take on responsibilities that are not ours because we don't stop to listen. We are so busy doing that we forget to be. Set aside daily moments, even if only 5 minutes, to be silent before God. Ask, "Lord, what is mine to carry today? What should I release?" There is a beauty in silence that we rarely experience in our noisy world. It was in the silence that Elijah heard God's whisper. It might be in the silence that you finally hear the difference between your anxious voice and the quiet voice of the Spirit. Third, practice the sacred no. Jesus, even in his mission to save the world, sometimes said no. He withdrew from the crowds. He set boundaries. In Mark 1:35-38, NIV, we see that even when everyone was looking for him, he chose to go to other places according to his calling, saying, "No to what is not yours frees up space to say yes to what truly is." It's like clearing a garden. You remove the weeds so the flowers can grow. Do you feel guilty when you set boundaries? This guilt can be a sign that you are touching on deep beliefs about your worth and about what it means to love. Bring this guilt to God. Ask him if it's truly guilt or just the discomfort of new growth. Fourth, learn the difference between empathy and absorption. Empathy is feeling with someone. Absorption is taking on responsibility for the other person's feeling. You can love deeply without drowning in others' emotions. In Romans 12:15 ESV, we are called to rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. Notice it doesn't say to fix others' weeping or to be the cause of their joy. Being present is different from being responsible. Fifth, practice conscious surrender. When you realize you are carrying a burden that is not yours, perform a concrete act of surrender. It can be something as simple as opening your hands while praying, "Lord, I surrender this situation, person, concern to you. I recognize that this is not mine to carry or control." There is a lesser-known verse in Nahum 1:7 NIV that says, "The Lord is good, a refuge in times of trouble. He cares for those who trust in him." He knows you. He knows your limits. He knows your struggles, and he is waiting for you to trust enough to let go. Sixth, find true community. Often we carry too much because we try to walk alone. Galatians 6:2 ESV tells us to bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Note that this implies reciprocity, not just you carrying everything for everyone. Who are the people with whom you can be vulnerable? Who can help you discern what is yours and what is not? If you don't have these people, start praying for them. God did not design us to walk alone. Seventh, be attentive to disguised pride. Sometimes the root of our overload is the subtle pride that whispers, "If I don't do it, no one will do it right," or "Everyone depends on me." This sounds like selflessness, but it can be a form of control or a search for approval. Proverbs 16:18 NIV warns us, "Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall." Be attentive to this silent danger that can hide even in the best intentions. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, rediscover who you are beyond what you do. Your worth does not come from your productivity or how much you carry. It comes from the fact that you are loved by God, unconditionally, irrevocably, eternally. In Zephaniah 3:17 ESV, we find one of the most beautiful images of God. The Lord your God is in your midst, a mighty one who will save. He will rejoice over you with gladness. He will quiet you by his love. He will exult over you with loud singing. Imagine that, God rejoicing over you, not because of what you do, but simply because you are. Perhaps the rest you seek so much doesn't just come from doing less, but from knowing more, knowing who you truly are in God's eyes. I want to end with an image. Imagine a river. When you try to hold the water with your hands, it escapes through your fingers. But when you open your hands and just let the river flow, your hands become a channel. They are washed, refreshed, but they do not carry the weight of the river. This is how we are called to live, not as reservoirs trying to contain everything, but as channels through which God's love can flow freely, both to us and to others. Tonight, before you sleep, try this simple exercise. Physically open your hands and name, one by one, the burdens you need to surrender, and then sleep in peace, knowing that the same God who keeps the stars in their places cares for every detail you have entrusted to him. Tomorrow is a new day, a day to carry only what is yours, a day to be a channel, not a reservoir, a day to discover how light the yoke is when we carry only what we were designed to carry. If this message touched your heart, please don't keep it to yourself. Comment below on what burden you decided to release after watching this video. Your experience might be exactly the word someone else needs to hear today. Subscribe to the Walking with God channel, hit the notification bell to receive more messages like this, and share it with that person you know is carrying more than they should. Sometimes a simple video can be the start of a journey of liberation. Remember, you don't have to carry the world. It's already in God's hands.